Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. Today is January 3rd, 2024. 2024. Almost a quarter of a century has passed in the 21st century. Can you guys believe it? It's been one hell of a ride, all things considered. I remember when I was a kid, I get the Sunday newspaper and comics would come through, and I got both the Rocky Mountain News and the Denver Post, and always loved the Rocky Mountain News because they'd have the best comics. And you flip to the back, and you have all these different comics, and there was one, I think it was called Zitz, and he sees 1999 turn to 2000, and he says, "Finally, it's over. This is the century." And it just feels like yesterday, and now almost 25 years into it. It's crazy. And so much has happened. We saw the rise of mobile computing, the rise of social media. We saw the rise of 4G and 5G, I guess 3G as well. The dawn of AI. Everybody talked about AI. I remember as a kid as well watching The Twilight Zone, the old school episodes with William Shatner, and there's a gremlin on the wing. But then also there were several episodes about how computers, robots were going to take over everything, mechanizations, the danger. And that was in the I think 50s, or early 60s. Pretty crazy to think about how we're now here. LLMs are a thing and they're growing exponentially. Exponential technologies have really defined this whole century. And it's also a time of great unrest. Institutions are falling apart. Everywhere you look, everybody's unhappy about something. They just can't agree about what that something is, but they know deep down inside they're getting screwed somewhere. And a lot of people have been propagandized. There's a lot of hate, a lot of anger, but there's a lot of good stuff too. A lot of positivity, a lot of people that are done and they really want the world to be a better place and they're trying to find a way to make it happen. So in 2009, January 3rd, Bitcoin turned on. It's a pretty amazing thing. The very first block, the network starts. Took a little while for things to get spinning up, but now look at where we are at 15 years later. There's a global movement of probably more than 100 million people in just 15 years. If that was a religion, people would be concerned that it would displace Christianity in a decade or two at that rate of growth. More than 100 million people in 15 years that believe we should be our own bank, that believe we should be in control of our money, our assets, our identity. And we should be able to check things, the concepts of inclusive accountability. Now, Bitcoin's not the end all be all. And if you look at it from a perspective that it has to run the revolution itself, it can't do that. As a foundation upon which conceptually to stand upon to show that you can have decentralized gold, you can have institutions and services be taken from the government and put into the commons and run in a transnational basis. It's the single biggest innovation mankind has seen since the invention of the corporation. And that's where I leave it. That's the inspiration that drew me into the space. I said, I can do better. And I was enabled to do better because of Bitcoin. And there are so many thousands of entrepreneurs in our industry who've done that. When we looked at Cardano, for example, I got a little device here. This is a B-Link GDR. It's a mini computer, nothing particularly special about it. It's got a Ryzen processor in it and nice graphics card. I put 64 gigs of RAM. They're SODIMMs and 2 terabyte hard drive. This costs less than $1,000. This right here is powerful enough to run a Cardano network, actually overpowered for our entire network. And this goes down in cost every year. Imagine that. We've democratized the ability to run a global institution that can be the backbone of all the assets, the identity, and voting systems of the future for governments, people, corporations, everything in between. We live in a time of enormous innovation. We live in a time where everybody actually has an opportunity to have a say and participate. This is the year where the governance of Cardano will likely turn on for better or for worse. And it likely will be SIP 1694. We'll see. Stake pool operators have a lot to say there. But in that decision, should it go through, thousands of people who have never met each other will now serve in kind of a digital Congress across the world, hundreds of places. more than 100 nations, making big decisions, making small decisions, talking about the philosophy, talking about the direction, the pursuit, and unlocking more than $1 billion of assets that are sitting in our treasury and deciding what the budget ought to be and where to deploy them, who to deploy them to, and how to get things done. Intersect is already operational, more than 1,000 members. Intersect's growing by leaps and bounds. The GitHub repos have been transferred over. They control now the product backlog and the code of Cardano as a giant open source project inspired by things like the Apache Foundation, Linux Foundation, and best practices from 30 years of open source principles. Combine that with a blockchain-based government, and you have an open source project like no other, one where you work for the protocol, not a person, and you can legitimize the changes and decisions through a democratic process that is the most secure possible. Now, we have a long road to go. There's a lot to do, and we still fight for the hard problems. If you look at the Ethereum roadmap, for example, it's a good roadmap, but what it's doing is pushing the complexity and all of the elegance of solving things to the layer 2 at the end of the day. They've kind of given up on layer 1 sharding and scaling because it's hard, especially with the design decisions they've made. We haven't. When you look at input endorsers, it directly tackles one of the biggest problems of how to scale, especially when combined with technologies like Mithril and extended UTXO. These are inevitabilities. They aren't, can we do it? Is it possible? Should we do it? It will get done one way or the other. And with Minotaur, you talk about multi-resource consensus. You can incentivize storage, network, and computing in addition to the security of the system, which means you can invent future variants of Ouroboros that give decentralized resources to basically provide a hosting layer, a service layer for all of the things you need to fully embrace Web3 and not have a single central actor in charge of anything. And by having rich proofs, that means that you can interface with these things as a light client and still have a full node worth of security because you can always check it yourself. That's the most fundamental truth that we learn from Bitcoin. When you say be your own bank, it means you can check your own ledger and verify that you own your own property. Analogously, for anything you see in crypto land, you have to always ask, can I check it myself or not? These are basic principles, and I'd like to believe that they have yet to be lost. In fact, they've been reinforced and rediscovered time and again, hack by hack, trust failure by trust failure. We look at things like Luna and FTX, we ask ourselves, how did that happen? Well, because you substituted human judgment and character and human regulation for things that probably could have been done by machines and should have been done by machines. And at the end of the day, people are people. And one of the things we've learned 24 years into the 21st century is people will always let you down. There are no exceptions. You learn this first as a kid. You look at your dad and your mom, big people in your life growing up, they're perfect. And then little by little, you start discovering inconsistencies and problems. And you start discovering that they're not as perfect as you thought they were, which is why a lot of teenagers rebel. And then later, as an adult, you accept them for who they are and you find ways to love and embrace them despite the fact that they have flaws. Well, the same thing is with every institution that we have. We look across all of the institutions of the United States, the world order, this multipolar world we're moving into. They do a lot of good. They also do a lot of harm. And it's sometimes difficult to reconcile. How can a nation state or an organization that saves lives at the same time take them? And where are the feedback loops to make it a little bit better? No one's perfect, but the only way you can get better is to acknowledge that you have problems. And those problems, you have to have the right structures to detect them and make sure that people agree about them. The issue is we're moving to a post-truth world where people don't want to admit mistakes or problems, and they don't see flaws or issues in the things they support, even when it's obvious that there are concerns. Blockchain technology is the antidote because what it does is it acts as a cognitive mirror. Whether it's convenient to you or not, the Bitcoin blockchain is going to operate the way it is intended tomorrow. and the next day and the next day. And whether it's convenient to you or not, Cardano is going to do the same. And the same will be, for frankly, for Ethereum and many other true blockchain systems in the ecosystem. What we do with that information is a personal choice. What we've noticed is that the people who rely upon the power structures being inconsistent, divisive, and are attempting to destroy the blockchain industry because they understand they cannot survive in sunshine and daylight. They have to do the things they do in darkness. So we're headed in the right direction. 15 years in, it is truly exceptional to receive such a gift of hope and liberation, and a gift that keeps on giving and we can give to others.